Hello, welcome to Chapter 4, Guidance in the Classroom. In this chapter, we'll look at how we use guidance in a practical way in your early childhood classroom. On the first two slides, you'll see that after studying the chapter, there are some basic goals, and these will be questions that I would hope that you would be able to answer by the end of reading in this chapter and in thinking about and studying about the concepts that we're going to look at. At the beginning of this chapter, it talks about how we begin to view ourselves as professionals versus technicians. In the first case, we want to look at the professional teacher. The professional teacher uses diagnostic skills to assess situations. It calls you just to think about why children are behaving in certain ways and then make a judgment call based on those things. All day long, you'll make ongoing hypotheses and taking action based on those hypotheses, trying to figure out why children are doing what they're doing. Now, obviously, the longer you're in the classroom with children, you learn from your own experience. You begin to understand why children do certain things at certain times of the day. You begin to understand things like it's getting near lunch and children tend to be more cranky and more irritable just before they get ready to eat. Nap time would be another time of the day that we would likely experience mistaken behavior, especially from young children in that toddler and 3-year-old age range. Now, if you think about yourself as a technician is when we think of you're going to respond in predetermined ways. If a child does this, then this will happen. An example would be if a child runs in the classroom, then they automatically go to timeout. This is an inflexible way of thinking. It calls us as a professional to think about why a child might be running in the classroom. Was someone chasing them? Were they trying to get somewhere quickly? Were they using their feet in a new way? A timeout is not always the best option in this case. As a professional, you may need to just stop and think and try to figure out why they're running. Now, overall, we're looking to build positive teacher-child relationships. And in this chapter, it calls us to think about how we build that relationship with each and every child. There are some specific things we can do to help build that relationship. The first one being spending time one-on-one with each child in your classroom on a daily basis. Now, I know what you're thinking. Nobody can do that every day, and you're probably right, especially the younger children that you work with. But it is important that you take time every day, even if it's just a few minutes here or a few minutes there. Then children know you truly care about them, and they begin to feel that love relationship with you. Good guidance happens best in a loving relationship. Those times might be while we're sitting down to eat lunch, while we're changing diapers, we stop and talk with the child that we're working with. It may be while we're sitting down in the block area, or we stop to read a story to just one child. Anything that you do during the day, one-on-one with a child, builds that relationship. I can no more walk over to Walmart and try to guide a child who's jumping up and down in the aisle because they don't know me. Children who know you are much more likely to be interested in listening to you and following your positive guidance. The next step is just to get face to face. Now, those of you who know me in real life know I'm very tall. I'm actually 6 feet tall, no hair, no shoes. And so in an early childhood classroom, I must look like a giant. So it's my job to get down on the floor, and that's where I spend much of my time, either on the floor, on a small stool, on a small chair, or down on my knees, getting face to face at eye level with children. If you don't realize, even though you may not be as tall as I am, you're still very tall compared to your young children in your classroom. An example that you might try is just to talk to somebody who's sitting down in a chair, but stay standing up. After you talk for a while, you'll realize it's not very comfortable. It would feel much better if you would just sit down in a chair at eye level talking to them. Even as adults, we modify our body language to fit our audience. If your best friend is sitting on her bed or sitting on the couch and you come in and you sit down to talk, You get next to them, eye to eye. That is exactly the same type of interaction and relationship the children in your classroom desire and are looking for. It is not necessary to use a harsh or stern voice when working with young children. Just using a pleasant, calm voice and ordinary language is what they desire. Actually, it works quite the opposite. The louder you are, the louder the children will be. The quieter you are, the quieter the children will be. I have been able to still whole rooms full of children, even large groups up to 100 or more children, just by whispering. Children will tend to lean in to hear what it is you're trying to say. Those pleasant, calm voices go a long way. I know that many of you have heard teachers use loud voices or stern or even harsh voices, but children do not respond to that very well. Naturally, they seek out what's considered to be called motherese, a mother's type voice. So if we have gentlemen listening to this, a gentleman's voice is just as great. It also, though, needs to be pleasant and calm. It is very important also that we remember children need physical contact. They desire that. The younger they are, the more they need. Those of you who work with infants and toddlers know they like to be close to you, to be held close, to talk to, very dear and close. Older they get, they tend to sit a little further away, but they still need to know that you have that warm, responsive contact with them. I know that not all teachers are comfortable with hugs and what I call the warm fuzzies, so we can find other ways as well. A high five, a pat on the back, a pleasant nod, any kind of interaction that lets the child know you truly care. Now, this next part is vital, acknowledging children for their accomplishments and effort. When we think about mistaken behavior, sometimes we think about all the things children aren't doing, but we forget to remind them of all the things that they are doing, especially if you have a child in your care who tends to do a lot of mistaken behavior. It's vital that you acknowledge every time they do exactly what you've been looking for. If typically this child is wiggly at story time, they touch their neighbors, they move around a lot, and then today they sit very still and they're very attentive to what your story is. Today is the day you need to acknowledge that and say, "Hey, Johnny, I'm so happy that you sat so still and so calmly during story time. That makes me very proud of your hard work." This lets children know that what they're doing is right. It's appreciated and we noticed. Now, this is probably the most important thing in this chapter. Our job is not only to point out mistaken behaviors and help children correct those, but to reduce the need for those behaviors. Think of it more like prevention. We don't always want to have to go to the emergency room because we didn't go to the doctor when we first started feeling sick. It is the exact same way in your classroom. If I can reduce the need for mistaken behaviors, I will less likely have to use those emergency measures, just like that emergency room visit when you didn't go when you first started getting sick. Often there's a root in what we're doing. I don't know what that is. Oh Lord.